Well, hello everyone. This is Alex Suber with Destiny Ministries, and I'm joined today by Pastors Tommy and Dinora Brandon of Calvary Church in Fort Worth, Texas. How are you doing today?
We're doing great, thank you.
Doing good, Alex. Good to see you this morning.
It's good to see you too. It's such an honor to have you here with us. Just a little addition to your magazine article that will be in our fall holiday edition. So we wanted to invite Pastors Tommy and Dinora on the broadcast today because they've recently been appointed as senior pastors of Calvary Church in Fort Worth, and so we know that they have a lot of insight in ministry and leadership and just church leadership. And so just have a few questions to ask them and get some insight. And so I'm excited. Again, it's such an honor to have you two here with us and to take time out of your day to just spend some time with me over the internet. It's a great thing. So before we get into leadership and church and all that stuff, why don't you guys just tell us a little bit about your family, your story, your children, anything that you would like to share about that?
Well, we've been married 15 years. It was 15 years this past May, and we have two beautiful girls. Selah is 9 years old, and Esme is 4 years old. And we both grew up in church, have totally different backgrounds, though, but I'll let Tommy kind of tell you about that.
Well, I think it's obvious for anyone viewing this video or reading the article that whenever you have a beautiful wife and you have two daughters, what that equates to is I don't have a vote in anything.
That's true.
I'm outnumbered. I'm overruled. But I think what Dinora was talking about concerning our background differences as a family that has merged together, it's one thing is as a family we've merged a difference in cultures. I'm from a white family, Dinora Hispanic. I'm from South. I'm raised my whole life in Louisiana. Dinora's a West Coast girl from California. So she's from the land of Quacky. I'm from the land of LSU.
Go Tigers.
Come on, go Tigers. So those two things have come together. But then there's also a little bit of church background merging. While we both came from pretty strong faith families, there were just a few little differences in our faiths, which has been really cool because the journey that we've been on together as a couple now as parents has really brought a little bit more clarity in our faith. We've both learned a little bit of God from each other. So we're really living the dream, to be honest with you. Beautiful wife, halfway decent husband, but two drop-dead gorgeous, very smart little girls. So that's our family. Yeah. The life of the Brandons, Alex.
Great. Well, that's awesome. That's cool to see the kind of merging of the different cultures, not only the church background, but also just the ethnic, and then the South versus the West Coast. That's probably one of the big differences. I know Louisiana is a little bit different than San Diego. I've lived there more than a couple years.
That's right.
Yes. So we already just got into a little bit about church background and how you have both been raised in a pretty strong family of faith and in the church. And so kind of what led you and why did you get involved in ministry? I don't know, Pastor Tommy or Pastor Dinora, if you were involved before you were married or if this was something that happened after you guys were married and you both decided to go into ministry together, or if you could kind of share a little bit with us about that.
Okay, let me kind of hop in first on this one. When it comes to ministry, I'm one of those very lucky, and I truly say that, blessed. I'm very fortunate that I could take you literally to the very spot where I knew without a doubt that I was called into ministry. I was one of the lucky ones. It was never a let me find my way. Mm-hmm. I knew, and it was pretty cool because I knew at a young age. I was 15 years old. I was at a church youth camp. I'd always been pretty sold out for the ways and the things of the Lord. Like any teenager, I had my moments where I was half crazy. But in my heart of hearts, I never disqualified myself from being sensitive to the leading of the Spirit of God, and it manifested in a calling. I knew without a doubt that I was called to preach the gospel of Jesus Christ. So it kind of set me on a course that I was light years ahead of a lot of my peers that were trying to navigate through those really difficult latter teen, early 20s. They were really trying to find the direction, and I compliment every young student that truly takes it serious and tries to find the perfect will of God. I was one that just got it. I was just lucky, Alex. I was very blessed to know that I was called to preach. So I entered into my ministry well before I ever even met Dinora. Not to get bogged down in a love story, but I was a youth pastor in San Antonio, and back in the days when we had section youth rallies, I brought a youth group to a youth rally, and this hot mamacita was singing at the local church that we were visiting. And you know, my story is just a little bit different than hers, because she chased me down, Alex.
We all know that's not true.
She chased me down and did everything but beg me to give her some attention. But as it goes for ministry, I was kind of on that path. And the neat thing about our relationship now in ministry is Dinora had her own callings and beckonings from God for her own ministry before she even met me. And I'll kind of let her kind of talk about that a little bit. But I know there are some couples where the spouse, whether it be the husband or the wife, is kind of along for the journey. We're really lucky, and I say that with humility. We're very fortunate that we both knew, we both settled the issue well before we met one another, that we were all in with God, all in with ministry, and the Lord just allowed us to meet one another, and then allowed me to slow down long enough for her to catch me.
For some reason, I don't quite think that's the accurate version of the story as far as her catching you.
Right, Alex.
Concerning the love portion, I'll let her tell her portion of that.
Yeah. Well, for me, it wasn't. I didn't know right away that I would be a pastor's wife. That never, it didn't really cross my mind. I just knew that I loved the church, that I loved to be involved in the church. I loved serving the church. I loved being involved in music ministry and worship and leading in worship, and that was my passion, and just being in the presence of God. So it was just more about being open to whatever the Lord had for me. And when I met him, I did know after 3 dates of turning him down, after he finally got that date, within 2 weeks, the Lord, he told me that this was going to be my husband. And of course, it wasn't until a year after that he knew that. But I always tease him that I was just so much more spiritual than he was. And so, and we were very young. I was 20 years old when we got married. He was 25. And so we were very blessed at a young age to just know where God was leading us. And that was such a blessing that we did not have to be in limbo. We just always knew that this was going to be our home. Calvary Church was going to be our home. We felt that very early in our marriage. So.
Okay, great. That's a great story. I can definitely relate in my own life of seeing others around you who are kind of in that limbo phase, and you knowing that God has called you, and you already knowing what God's called you to do. And sometimes it can be hard because other people your age don't understand that. But that's great to hear. So kind of from what I'm understanding, you two were at Calvary pretty early in your marriage. Is that correct?
Yeah,
I was already here.
I was actually already here. Now, just to clarify, in case someone were interested, it's a very minor part of our lives, but yet major at the same time. We actually met in San Antonio. I was not at Calvary. Calvary's located in Fort Worth. I was a youth pastor in San Antonio. Dinora was attending as a member of another church in San Antonio. Mm-hmm. But from that time of meeting and our dating lives, speed things up, fast forward, I then came to work at Calvary. I was hired first as a youth pastor here, and I came single. And then it was, I guess, what would that be, babe? About 8 to 9 months later is when we got married.
Wow, that's such a great story, and that even leads a little bit into one of the questions I have a little bit later on. But before we get to that, I wanted to ask you, right now, in the church world and kind of in Christendom, there's a major focus on church planning. It's a really big missions focus, and it's a great thing. Anytime that we can have more people preaching the gospel, anytime that we can have more places where people have opportunities to go and get saved and to know Jesus, it's great. But you are a little bit unique of an example, Pastor Tommy, to where a lot of pastors, maybe they'll be youth pastors for a while, but then they feel to go and start their own church or go and plant their own church. And so I just wanted to ask you kind of what led you to choose to serve under Pastor Ron Lyles and just serve that local church without really ever wanting to have your own thing, just serving the house and serving his vision.
I've been asked this by so many people, Alex, and depending on the audience or the individual or groups that it's asking the question, I have a tendency to give the same answer, but yet in a little different way. I think with you and with the audience that's either viewing the video or reading the article, I think that you're spiritually mature enough that I can really just make it real simple for you. I was called here. And I think that we could get such blurry lines that we forget it's about the calling.
Yeah.
Not only was I called to preach, I was called here. Now, let me kind of take a little bit of a detour and give maybe a softer answer for a few people. I think that one of the greatest, maybe the greatest thing you can do for yourself in ministry is be yourself. If God called you, there was a reason. It was the Y-O-U. It was you. There was something about you that God wants to use. Well, I think that I'm all about church planning. God's even put a gentleman in my life that's become a great friend and also a cohort in ministry that feels called to plant a church, and I'm going to do everything I can to help him plant. But I'm a little bit worried in the days that we're living in the culture. I think while every spot on the map needs a church, I'm praying that the right people are starting churches.
Amen.
And I'm going to drop this word fad and trend, and I do not mean it critically, because I know that there's a need for churches everywhere. But sometimes I wonder if there are young men and young women, young couples, that might want to plant a church, and I hope they're not doing it in a confused state of their calling. I hope that they're not sojourning and wandering through trying to find themselves, that they say, oh, that's real hot, let me go plant a church, because I can tell you there's a lot of churches that fail. And sometimes, well, we know it's not the gospel that fails. Right. We know it's not the Holy Spirit's leading that fails. I just think some people miss it. And a lot of fantastic churches need staff to make it the greatest church in their city. And you never know what could happen when you're serving another man's vision. God could literally start bringing clarity to your own ministry in that season of serving someone else. But for me, back to, since you've asked me about my life, I even knew whenever I fancied myself as an evangelist that I wasn't an evangelist. I tried everything. I tried to preach with a guy on the organ. I tried to walk on the back of the pews. I tried the screaming. I tried the hollering. My problem was, if someone wanted to be baptized in the Holy Spirit, don't get me to pray for them, because it never happened. I had so many local church pastors back in the days when we would go to eat after church on Sunday nights They would sit with me at the Pizza Cafe out in the middle of rural America, and they would say, you know, you really preach like a pastor.
Hmm.
And here I was offended. I'm a hotshot evangelist.
Right.
I'm burning the trail. I got my dry cleaning hanging in my back window. I know this game. And I realized real quick, I need to be me. And how I am, I'm a relationship guy. I love people. I'm not looking to preach a good sermon and move on. I'm all about putting some roots down, digging out relationships, raising my family. And I think that my DNA, because God created me, Alex, when God called me, he wanted me just the way he created me. And he knew that I had abilities because he put them in me. And I had to be honest with who I am. I'm not that hotshot traveling evangelist, but boy, I would give anything sometimes to be one because it's so cool. At any rate, that's kind of the way I came to serve in the local church. The blunt answer is I was called to do so. The real spin full of fun answer is because I found out real quick I couldn't do much of anything else.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's great stuff. Just the being real and being true to your calling. I know there's such a temptation, you know, even in my own life as a young minister, and I think it's you know, for a lot of young ministers and ministers or people of any age to kind of conform to what seems to be the hot thing or the fad thing.
That's right.
When really it's a detriment to you if you get into that, knowing that's not really who you are, because in the long run, you know, it'll just never work out for you. So I think that's just such a word, and I know you've spoken about that quite a bit with different groups, but I think it's such a word for this time and for this time in the church. So, you know, you said something about, you know, being hired as a youth pastor and how you were, you know, originally brought to Calvary just as a single youth pastor, and so that kind of segues into one of the questions that I had, and that I've seen personally at Calvary. I've been there several times over the last year or so. Calvary, if you've never been there, for those that are watching, is a very diverse church, both ethnically and with ages, but also on their staff. They have a very, what I call, multi-generational staff, and not only as far as, you know, age and actually number of years, but also what I feel as kind of time in ministry and kind of generations in ministry. You have people who are, you know, just around my age who have been in ministry just for a couple years. You know, you have a little bit older staff who have been in maybe 10 years or so, and it just keeps moving up. And there's kind of this great, almost to use pipeline, that's probably not the best word, but of ministry and of building up young leaders. And I think that's been a culture that's been implemented at Calvary, even from the start with Pastor Lyles, is to train up those young leaders and to just to keep progressing in ministry. So I wanted to ask you, was that intentional? I believe that was an intentional, and so I wanted to ask you, was that intentional? And also, what are some steps that Calvary has taken or continues to take to kind of have that leadership culture of a multi-generational leadership?
Well, I'll say that Pastor and Sister Lyles have always empowered us. You know, they've never held us back in any part of ministry. If they felt that we needed to do something, they've always pushed us. You know, that we've never felt restraints, and I think that has a lot to do with it. They're very confident in their roles, and there was never any insecurity. So for them to, you know, to push us and to encourage us is, you know, it was very natural, and I think that's why you see that, you know, generational deal going on. I mean, they have just been amazing at bringing up leaders and building strong relationships with them.
Yeah, of all the questions you have asked, or maybe even will ask, there are a few questions that the answer starts with Ron and Sherry Lyles. Mm-hmm. This has nothing to do with me, man. Ron and Sherry Lyles are the real deal when it comes to fathering and mothering. It's even seen in our local church. He has sons all throughout the pews of this congregation. And I really feel that Ron's greatest gift, and far be it for me to say what his greatest gift is because there's so many, but I think he's an amazing father. I am super tight with my biological dad. He and I are like best friends. But Ron is super tight with me as a spiritual covering. And for years, Ron's been here he's been here 40 years, man. For years, he has had sons throughout the church, but he also has them around the country. And to kind of bring me back into the equation, back in my romping, stomping evangelist days, I actually was an evangelist here several times, and our relationship started there. Well before he hired me, he was my pastor. I would call him, I'd be preaching in some crazy Section 6 youth rally in Utah, and I would call him, and he would pastor me. Well, from that relationship, when he hired me, he has just been a covering, an overseer of my life. Well, from that, we'll now step into the guys that have come on board with us and will continue to come on board with us. I have noticed that type of interest is it jumps off on others. It's contagious. Mm-hmm. I have found myself, without ever realizing that I've got the ability, I have found myself bringing others around me that are a little bit younger and helping shape and direct and give the little bit of wisdom that I have. We have embraced here at Calvary, and I want to be real clear that it may not always happen this way, but our first option, that's what I want to say, our first option is always to try to hire from within. May not always happen. God's will is definitely trumping what I would want, but my desire would always be to try to hire from within. So we have seen now, like our current student pastor was brought in from outside because he replaced me. But now he has gotten sick with this genius idea of shaping leaders, and now he's got someone following him from within. And now I already see our junior high pastor shaping someone a little bit younger than him. Mm-hmm. So I'm allowing my faith picture, Alex, what I can see in my mind, I can see what God's doing. He's taking Pastor Ron's idea and vision and gifts, and it's being doubled down. It's multiplying, it's snowballing. And I've been able to do a little bit. Our student pastor's doing even more. Our junior high pastor's even doing more. And I really feel like our future will be exactly aligned with what you're pointing out that we've been successful at, and that is bringing up that next crop, investing in that next age. And, you know, you'll always have some that fall through the cracks on that type of journey. But I will tell you this, if you try it, you'll reap great benefits from it. Because now Pastor Ron, our bishop, is surrounded by a team, a young army of young men and women that have his back, that believe in him, that would not be here without him. So we'll go to our graves covering him, fighting for him, defending him, and he's reaping now the great harvest of a heart of a father.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, and that's so true. If you've ever been around Bishop Lyles, I don't know if the people watching, if you ever get the experience just to at a conference or whatever it may be, just go up and have a few words. He has just this magnetic draw that just, I mean, if you imagine a father or a grandfather in your mind, it's just what he is, and he will just so kindly and ever so gently just guide you along and give you wisdom that you'll just keep replaying in your mind, and gets better and better the more that you think about it. So that's amazing. It's great to see that Calvary has that culture and is continuing that culture through the generations.
Hey, Alex, I was going to tell you something funny about what you just said, that you keep playing it through your mind. I find myself now Uh, I'm loving what I'm doing now because really all I do is rehash everything he's done.
Right.
I just got off. I got off a phone call on the way here to enjoy our time with you, and I'm like pastoring this young preacher 3 hours away, and all it was Ron's material, and I looked like the genius.
Yeah,
Right. I mean, if it's not broke, don't fix it.
right. I tell Tommy every day he sounds more and more like Pastor Lyles. I mean, it's crazy.
I'm going to have a selfish moment, and if Bishop Lyles is watching, I even do the okay, and it works.
Yeah.
That's great. That's so great. And if you haven't met Bishop Lyles, if you meet him, you'll understand what we're talking about. So, well, we're kind of wrapping up here. This has been just great material so far. Kind of the last question, and then if we have a little bit more time, we may let you guys just share if there's anything on your heart. But I just wanted to ask you, do you have 2 or 3 maybe pitfalls or traps, however you want to say, that you would forewarn a leader of any age or any position about, and maybe how that they could dodge those pitfalls and dodge those traps? Just some general advice.
Well, I'm going to go a little old school on one thing concerning the preacher. This is the preacher. And I know that maybe there's others that are watching or reading that may not be preachers. But whenever you yield yourself to the calling of pulpit or leadership, clergy, ministry, when you say yes to that, there's a lot of responsibility that comes with it. And perception is everything. Don't believe the lie that you can kind of do whatever you want to do and get away with it. I had an older preacher that's still a part of my life, not Bishop Lyles, by the way, but someone else that's part of my world. And I'm going to be a little southern in this. I hope I can get away with it. But he told me, real simple, Tommy. He said, if you want to survive in ministry, and this is for the guys, he said, keep your zipper up, keep your nose clean, and stay in the Word. And I know that's a little crass, but for the guy, it's not too bad. Come on.
It's bad.
For the guys out there, let's just be honest. Don't disqualify yourself and being silly and getting yourself into a situation that you can't get out of. If we're going to say yes to this calling, take on the full responsibility of the calling and guard yourself. When it comes to serving in the local house, we're going to take a little detour. This goes for the guys and the gals. It goes for any position that's under the leadership of a senior pastor. Don't ever drink the Kool-Aid that you know more than he does. Don't ever fall into the trap that it's about you. Because during this season, if it's 6 months or 16 years, it has nothing to do with you. It's all about God first and the man and the woman that you're serving. Whether you agree. Now, we're not talking about immorality issues. We're not talking about stuff that would be criminal. But if God's given them a vision to paint the house blue with orange carpet, you think it's the most beautiful house in the city. If you think if God led him to a 7-night revival with one of those organ-type preachers, you be on the front row and shout the house down. Don't drink the Kool-Aid that it's about you. So I would say when it comes to pitfalls for the staff guys, show up, stay late. When you don't want to, act like you want to, because those are the tests that the man you're serving will get you to where you're wanting to go if you'll help him get to where he wants to go. If you become the roadblock in his vision, you've just cut yourself off from the great blessings of God in getting you to where you want to be. And those are just random. I'm sorry they're not.
That's great. That's great.
Sharp, but those are just simple little things that I've always held in the back of my mind. Just do things right, do things honest, show up, make Pastor Ron and Pastor Sherry look as good as I could possibly help them look. Let their vision be carried out as well as I could carry it out. And you know, you reap great rewards for it. Anything but Just with you, babe?
Probably as far
Don't
as
be crass.
as far as pitfalls, I think it's really important that you don't compare yourself to anyone else
Ooh.
either. I mean, that's so easy to do with Facebook and everyone posting about their own church, and you see other people's successes, and that can easily discourage you. But when you keep your eyes on what the Lord is doing in your life and your personal walk, just realize that your story is going to be different, and either way, He's writing that story, so it's going to be beautiful no matter what, as long as you honor Him and you stay humble and obey that calling and not compare yourself to anybody else. This is God's writing the story, not anybody else, and just know that He's gonna make something beautiful. So
Come on.
Come on with it. That's so true. I know, just with all the social media and the instant connectedness of the world today, that it's so easy to compare yourself. Look at other people. How many did they have this Sunday? Well, I had less than them. So you find somebody that you had more of and make yourself feel better. And so it's such a dangerous road to go down when you start comparing yourself. So I think that's really, really great stuff from both of you. So really, that's all the questions that you would just kind of have on your heart. Anything that you've been kind of chewing on lately that you would want to share just for the next couple of minutes that maybe would benefit the readers and the people that are watching this?
I would just say, just stay sensitive to the voice of God, and wherever you are in your walk with God, just know that He's for you, and He is working everything out for your good. And whether you're in a waiting process and you're just not sure of where you're going, just know that He's ordering your steps, and as long as you're following after Him, He will show you step by step what you need to do. And just know that He's got your back at all times, and He's faithful.
Amen.
That's awesome. Alex, I would just wrap my portion up with, I want to say thank you to you, man. I want to say thank you to Dr. Phil and Miss Kathy, all of Destiny, all of DLI, all the little wings of Destiny Ministries. It's touching so many people and helping so many others. If I were back at 20 years old, 25 years old, I would have given anything for these type of venues. I didn't have those things. So I'm really appreciative for the young men and the young women that I have the privilege and the opportunity of hanging out with here at Calvary. They're being blessed by you and by Dr. Brassfield, by Landon, all of those that make Destiny and all of its sub-ministries what it is. Thank you. It really is a blessing. You guys are shaping the world, and we applaud that, and we celebrate it.
Well, thank you, and we thank you two. If it wasn't for pastors and churches like Calvary, we wouldn't be able to do what we do, and taking time out of your day. I know pastoring a church and having a family, there's not a whole lot of just spare time in there, I imagine, but taking time like this to just hang out, we really appreciate it, and it is such an honor. I know it's going to bless so many people, and I know I've been touched. I've learned a lot. I need to just go back and watch over this and digest it a little bit more. And so again, just thank you. And if you guys don't have any final words, I guess we'll go ahead and log off. If you're watching this later on YouTube or Google Hangouts and you enjoyed it, just make sure you like it and leave any comments. Hopefully we'll have the opportunity to do more Hangouts with leaders and pastors and different people. So just let us know that you watched it, and we hope that you enjoyed it, and we hope that it blessed you. So have a great day, and again, just want to say thank you to Pastor Tommy and Dinora and Calvary Church, and you're just awesome, my heroes. So,
Alex, appreciate it.
All right, God bless, man. Thanks so much.
God bless you. We'll see you guys later.
All right.